Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
We're back with another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, and we're going mobile homes today. So even if you don't think that that's an asset class that you're interested in, you need to listen to this episode because Jason Velie is going to explain how all of his due diligence and knowledge of this specific niche has led to him to create an enormous business just inside this one small part of the real estate investing sphere. So get ready for Jason Velie. And before we get to the episode, I just want to remind you that the best thing that you can do is to follow the podcast so you get them in your inbox of your podcast inbox Monday and Thursday mornings because we go twice a week. And if you can't keep up, just keep going in the order that you want, find the episodes that you like, and over time, you will catch up. I get it. I appreciate you all. And thanks to everybody who's listening. Let's get to Jason Velie. This is episode 112 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Jason Velie. Jason is the founder of Cape Fear Cash Offers. He's been in the game since 2019 and has really gone bananas with mobile home, one single wide and double wide mobile home flipping. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this. But I want to know, before 2019, was real estate even a thought?
Somewhat, I would say. Nobody in my family had any real estate experience, but I had seen some other folks that slowly bought one rental at a time, the slow, boring way. And, I was attracted to that about, somebody else paying off my mortgages. And I thought that, maybe I could do that route, and by continuing to work the day job, throughout my career, and then maybe in retirement, I would have 25 or 30 rentals paid off and be wealthy in retirement. But it was around early 2019 that somebody introduced me to some real estate podcasts that really just showed me what was possible, and then from there, I never looked back.
Yeah, so I think you were under contract on your first property and somebody said, hey, have you heard about Bigger Pockets? And that's what unlocked it for you, right? As same for a lot of my guests.
Exactly.
Did it give you more confidence to know that so many other people were doing it? Is that what it was? Or was it just a knowledge base as well?
No, it was more of the knowledge base of just, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the biggest revelations to me was that hard money lenders and private lenders exist, because I went to school for finance. I had been a licensed financial advisor. I had my Series 7 and 66, and then I worked with institutional trust funds when I started to invest in real estate. And I couldn't believe that I had never heard of these before. And when I heard on Bigger Pockets that, about hard money lenders, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me all I have to do is find a really good deal? And if I find a good enough deal, somebody's going to be willing to give me 100% of the purchase price and the rehab budget. And I was crazy enough to believe it. And I went out, and then I found my first flip pretty quickly, which was a double wide. And I found a hard money lender that loaned me 100% of my purchase and rehab, even though I had no experience and even though it was a manufactured home, and flipped it pretty quickly, pretty easily, and made a little over 26 grand. And that's when I caught the bug. And that was my proof of concept. That's all I needed to see.
Yeah, and hard money is even more important for mobile homes because the possibility of loans, depending on the price point, are just not as various as other things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the property that you had under contract? What was that? The one before when you were just figuring it out?
Yes, so the very first property that I got under contract, outside of my primary residence, I intended for it to be a rental because, I was starting that slow boring portfolio, and it was a property I found on Craigslist and negotiated the price down a little bit. And I thought that on paper the numbers looked great, but when you actually go and look at the property, knowing what I know now, I never would have bought the property, but I didn't know enough back then to know what to look for construction wise. And
Yeah.
I thought I was being safe by hiring a home inspector, and I was dumb and hired the cheapest flat rate home inspector I could find. He missed everything. Like there was mold inside of the cabinets that were rotting inside that you can't see from the outside. I wasn't smart enough to open the cabinets and look because they looked fine from the outside. The
Yeah.
whole roof needed to be replaced. I didn't know that. The seller was lying to me about condition and what needed to be done. There were termites in the crawl space that the home inspector didn't find either. And then to add to all of that pain, the first contractor that I used ripped me off for like 16 grand. So it was an absolute mess.
You did it all on the first one.
Yeah. And so in a way, I kind of got lucky or blessed, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it, that I had that next property, which became my first flip, under contract before I realized how bad my first deal was that I had just bought. Otherwise, had I been a few months later and realized how bad of a deal I bought on that first one, I may not have continued to do that first flip.
Yeah, that's important. You started the momentum yourself, but it was really fortunate that it came up because those those are a lot of things you listed. But that's a good reminder to new investors that I know everyone wants to save as much money and make as much profit on that first property as possible, but these are the pitfalls that you just said. Just something easy where you assume, hey, well, every home inspector can kind of do the same thing. You find out quickly, like, that's definitely not correct.
Yep.
Were there things, other things? It was not identifying all the things wrong. So what ended up happening with that property?
Yeah. So I knew, before I bought the property, I looked at, okay, what's my risk profile? What's worst case scenario? At that time I had a wife and 2 kids, and now we're expecting our 5th child soon.
Wow,
And
amazing.
so I looked at it and said, okay, worst case scenario, something goes wrong. I can't rent it out. I have to float this, PITI payment of $351 a month because it was only a $60,000 property. And I took a loan from my 401k to get the 15% down to do the investment property loan. So the tiny mortgage and taxes and insurance was $350. And I knew I could cover that amount worst case scenario. And it was a good thing I did that because I had to end up covering that. And the sad part was, after getting ripped off by that contractor, I didn't have money to finish the repairs to be able to do anything with the property.
Yeah.
So I just had to sit on it vacant, paying those monthly payments. And I did that for about 2 years before I finally had some money to be able to get somebody else in there to finish that rehab. And then at that point, I just sold it. And truthfully, I should have lost money on that deal, but thankfully, as we know, real estate's very forgiving with time. And, the ARV after repair value of that property in those 2 years increased by probably around $25,000 to $30,000. So at the end of the day, I came out somewhere right around break even after all of that stress and headache.
Yeah, and I think even going through the mistakes, that's still a testament to your initial property evaluation in terms of like location and future value. You still bought well. You could have done better because you missed stuff, but the actual asset turned into be something that was appreciating. So like you said, the time helped you even though you couldn't do anything on it. I wonder, going back, what was the mistake you made with the contractor? Did you give all the money up front or the biggest deposit up front and then he just never showed up, he or she?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. We know we had a scope of work, we had a draw schedule in place, but because of the nature of some of the expenses, he requested a decent amount a deposit, probably, I don't know. I think the first deposit I gave him was maybe like 12 grand. And, because of the fact that he was going to need to pay the HVAC folks in full to do their work, and he was going to have to buy all the material for the roof, that didn't seem like an unreasonable amount to start him out with. But then the way he set up the draw schedule was strategically set up that he could just complete a couple of cheaper things and get big draws from me. And so the worst part was that when he told me that he finished the roof, he replaced the roof with a metal roof. And what I saw when he sent me pictures looked great, but he took pictures from every single angle of the house that showed the roof being complete, except for this one section that was probably, 10 feet by 25 feet that he didn't, there was nothing on there. It was just bare sheathing that was just open to the elements. And I guess he just miscalculated how much metal he was going to need and didn't have enough. But I was not wise enough to go drive out to the property because it was about 35 minutes away from where I lived. So it was kind of out of the way for me. I didn't have enough sense to go out there and check that the entire roof was done because from the pictures I saw, it looked like the whole roof was done. And so then I gave him the next draw, that he was supposed to get after completing the roof, and then he disappeared. And, and then I get a call from the folks that installed the HVAC that told me that he never paid them. And so they were coming after me for it. And all in all, with how much I paid him versus the amount of work he actually did, I lost out on about 16 grand or so. And the thing is, I could have taken him to small claims and I would have won, but he had no assets. He lived in a trailer park. He had one rundown vehicle. He had no money to his name. Him and his wife already spent all the money I gave them. The wife even admitted that to me when I called her.
Yeah.
And so even if I would have wasted my money going to court, I would have won a judgment and just slapped it on my wall and never seen a penny of that money, And then I found out after I called the wife some more a couple weeks later that he actually had 2 very significant strokes. And she even sent me proof of the documentation from the hospital. And I was like, you know what? Don't get me wrong. I'm not celebrating a stroke or saying anything like that. But
it's,
I'm just like, he's already gone through a lot in his personal life. And that's additional reasons that I know he's never going to have money to pay me back if I win that judgment, so.
Yeah. I think a lot of people go and they buy a big coaching class to go the first thing. And some people pay money in the School of Hard Knocks, which is what you did. But knowing that you had the other one, did it help you to just kind of go into those and then start moving that? Because I'm guessing that it was the profit from the flips that ended up in 2 years being able to go back, fix that property, and then get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially what happened.
So why mobile homes? Is it the for other investors that we've had on that have either focused or done a lot of mobile homes, the entry price is just great. And like you said in the beginning, another thing that's a commonality across the board is knowing that on these type of investments, especially what you said on your first investment, it's at least an amount that you understand that you could lose. And if you do, it's not going to end everything. It's not going to be great, but you're knowing that you're kind of putting that up on the table. Is that the reason around mobile homes? The price point is just very accessible.
Somewhat starting out, but truthfully, it's more so just the opportunity that's there. When you know the few nuances that you should know on buying these and, getting clear title in those few little things, you would be just as dumb to pass up on one of those opportunities as a flip as you would a stick-built house, in my opinion. And what I've noticed, at least in my market, is most house flippers in this market have no interest in manufactured homes. And it's for one of 2 reasons. It's either they don't know these few nuances, or more commonly I've found, even a lot of the veteran investors that have been doing it for as long as I've been alive, a lot of them don't realize that when you go to resell it after you've repaired it, that the end buyer that's buying it as their primary residence is able to obtain all the normal types of financing for their primary. So conventional financing, FHA, VA, USDA, as long as they're buying it as their primary residence, it qualifies for all of those. And so a lot of the other flippers don't realize that. So they just think that, you're going to be limited to selling it to a cash buyer and only get a really low price for it because of that. And that's just not the case. I mean, we have used double wides in this area selling for, I've got one right now under contract for sale for $240,000. And, there are brand new land home packages for double wides in our area for 300, 320, and even, I sold a single wide a few months ago that I renovated out in the country, like 30 minutes from the city, for $176,000. And people just don't realize there's, in my opinion, even more opportunity because the less competition.
Yeah, it really all makes sense. And I think I had Franco Perez on, who also does that as part of affordable housing. And I think that one thing that we talked about is a lot of people associate mobile homes with just the connotation of a trailer park, meaning like everything's on wheels and moving around. And that's not really what you're buying. Explain to everybody really what you're buying, because most people would just think they're regular homes, I think, from just a quick look on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let me clarify that I do not buy any mobile homes that don't come with the land. So if it's truly
that's important.
Yeah, if it's truly a mobile home, aka considered a vehicle, if it's on a rented lot somewhere in a trailer park, I don't do anything with those. I know some people that will buy them for $5,000 and sell them for $20,000 or move them and sell them for a little bit. I don't get into that. The only ones that I buy are the ones that are on a permanent foundation, deeded with the land that they're on. So they're sold with the land. And, there's a few things, if you want me to go into, I can, about, permanent foundation and, how that qualifies and stuff.
I think that would be helpful, because I think again, the connotation is like, mobile pad spaces, because even people who are thinking of mobile home park investing, this is something totally different. So yeah, just explain the foundation parts and why it's important for you to take them that way. It certainly helps with the loan portal. I know that, which you explained before.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's important that you know these things up front, because if you don't know these up front and you buy something that doesn't qualify for traditional financing and have your numbers, set with that expectation on the back end and you go to sell it, you're going to get burned. So essentially, when you take a single wide trailer or double wide trailer and you put it on land, you put it on a permanent foundation, what that means is there's a foundation of usually cinder block piers underneath the property, and the axles and the wheels and the tongue have been removed from the trailer. And then they put some form of skirting around the outside edge of the trailer to, keep rodents and stuff from getting under the house. And, one thing that is probably important to note is that, most people are used to seeing brick skirting or cinder block skirting, underneath these. And just to clarify, that's not part of the foundation. That's just skirting. It's not holding up the weight of the property. And because of that, if it has vinyl skirting, that's fine when it comes to the financing on the back end. And a lot of investors and even a lot of realtors in my market don't know that. I can't tell you how many double wides with vinyl skirting I have relisted for sale, or had my agent relist them for sale, and we get feedback from buyers agents that they like the house, but it wouldn't qualify for their financing because it doesn't have brick skirting. And that's just because they don't know. And so there's some educating that has to be done in that space. But, as far as title work goes, when somebody puts one of these on a permanent foundation, they're supposed to cancel the title with the DMV. And so you're telling the DMV this is no longer mobile. And then,
Right.
at least in North Carolina, there's also a form that's supposed to be filed with the county. It used to be called the affidavit of affixation, and now it's called a declaration of intent to affix to real property. And all that is you indicating to the county that, hey, we have canceled the deed with the DMV. It's no longer mobile. It's on a permanent foundation, and you are now allowed to tax the building for property taxes as well as the land. And as long as and to be able to do that, to be able to get clear title, you have to have the manufacturer's either serial number or VIN number, which can be found on the data plate inside of the home. And the data plate is just a full-size sheet of paper that has the manufacturer's information. It can usually be found. Normally, it's inside the kitchen cabinet door, often under the kitchen sink. Sometimes it's in a different area. Sometimes it's on the wall inside of a bedroom closet. If, say, it was in the kitchen cabinets and somebody remodeled the kitchen and threw it out and didn't save it, and the title work wasn't done properly the last time that it was sold, and you don't have any of those records anywhere on file, it can be a challenge getting that information to be able to get clear title. One option to be able to get a new data plate is if you find the small little, maybe 2-inch by 4-inch metal riveted HUD label on the back right of the siding, on the back of the property, if the siding hasn't been replaced, then there's a website you can go to use that HUD label to be able to pay a couple $100 and get a new data plate. However, if you have neither of those and no other paperwork, the only other option I've heard of is that on some trailers, they will engrave a serial number or VIN number on the frame, on the I-beam, but it's often on the part right where the tongue of the trailer was, which is now only 3 or 4 inches away from the brick skirting
Right.
or block skirting typically. So you can't even get your head in there to see it. You'd have to get a little adjustable camera to look up in there. And even then, there's a chance it may not be there. And if it's not, you may be completely out of luck. You may not be able to get clear title. And that's super, super important to know, because you have to make sure all the title work is clean and done up front so that it'll be an easy sale in the back end. And it's important to make sure that the attorney you use to close on the purchase of the sale is very familiar with these transactions and knows what they're doing, because I've had one instance before earlier on where the closing attorney, they didn't see that there was a property affixed to it in the title search, even though I told them it was up front. They forgot, and they only did a title search for the land. And so I went to resell it. We had to go backwards to the prior owner. There was still an active title. We had to get him to switch it into my name, cancel the title, file the form with the county. It was a lot of work and headache that if he wouldn't have been cooperative, it could have been a problem for me. And if you come across one of these where you have the data plate or access to it, and there is still an active title and that form hasn't been filed with the county, those are both very easy fixes as long as you have the data plate. So if that hasn't been done properly, don't let that stop you from moving forward. The title attorney can handle all that before you close. But truthfully, those are really the only few nuances you need to know title-wise. The only other important aspect is if the property has ever been moved from one permanent foundation to another, then it's disqualified for all of those types of financing except for VA loans. VA loans will still fund it if it's been moved once. If it's been moved more than once, it won't qualify for any of those. So if it's been moved twice or more, then your only buyer is going to be a cash buyer or you seller financing it to a buyer if you used your own cash to buy it.
Yeah, I was laughing before because you said kind of offhand, like, oh, I mean, that's kind of it. But you really just gave a 5-minute masterclass on the reason why most people will not do this, because it is very nuanced. And all the things that you just laid out there are the linchpins to doing well in the business. But you also know, looking around, most people just don't want to do that much work. It's a little bit more intricate with maybe what they think as less profit, But if you're good at it, then you can do more volume because you're the expert in that area where other people are passing, right? You're giving yourself that competitive advantage and then also everybody knows that you know, so you're going to get more opportunities. Has that started to come to pass now? They're like, well, Jason knows everything about how to get these deals done. It makes it easier for you to work with the sellers and then transfer to a buyer. Everything's done. No glitches in the end.
100%. I mean, I've been crowned by a couple of local investors as the trailer king, and I'm like, hey, I'll take it if that helps people send me deals. And what I found is most of the wholesalers in town that know that they may have a buyer that's willing to pay 10 or 15,000 more than me for a stick built flip, that most of those same buyers don't touch manufactured homes. So these same wholesalers that I might not be their number one buyer for this, a lot of stick built stuff, even those wholesalers are still bringing me all of their manufactured homes first. And there's more deal flow when you have, a niche like that, and you're known for it and known for being able to get it done.
That makes a lot of sense, though. I could see wholesalers who are very good at outreach. They can put a lot of things in, in the pending stage, but they don't know how to do all of those things that you just said. So it's easier for them to sell at a smaller profit to you. So you have a spread also on the back end, and then they can still work on the regular stick builds as well to get larger. That really makes sense. And I think that shows that you can kind of control that. And I do think I was going through your website, and I think one thing that's important, because you are focused on what seems like cash offers, but the bottom part explains like you're willing to work with the sellers to figure out what their needs are. And I think that's really the overriding most important thing for off-market acquisition, especially for this type of property. If they're still in there, it's not like they're going to usually go and upgrade to a huge home depending on the price point. So how have you learned how to be good in that area with that off-market negotiation direct to sellers, and also just taking over, even if it's a wholesale, sometimes the seller's still there?
Yeah. So, truthfully, I am just completely authentic and honest with the sellers. I don't consider myself to be some fantastic salesperson, but I think a lot of the fact that I've lived here my whole life and I sound like them, and truthfully, especially when I go to appointments that are a little bit out in the country where I live, more often than not, I end up making mutual connections with those people. Like we know a lot of the same people. And so there's instant trust and credibility there. But, I'm honest. I tell people, like, so for example, a lady called me yesterday. She saw one of my houses that we're rehabbing, and she lives in that same neighborhood. And she just inherited a house from her sister that passed 3 doors down from her. And she saw us doing work. And to my shock, she's a 72-year-old woman who figured out how to skip trace me as the owner of that property and find my information, find my website. And she called me and she, said she inherited this house. It needs a little bit of work, but not much. And she was considering selling it as is. And I just told her, I said, look, if the house is in financeable condition, which from what she said it was, I was like, look, your best route is going to be to list it with an agent on the market.
Yeah.
Even after paying their commissions, you're still going to walk away with more money. And I was like, and I told her, I gave her real numbers. I said, look, I think if you list it for sale with an agent, you're probably going to sell it. If you did the repairs first and list it, you'd probably sell it for around $230 or so. If you listed it as is without doing any work, I think you could probably fetch around $190 maybe.
Yeah.
But if you sold it to me and I have to do the work, I'm only going to be able to offer you about $145 for it. So even if you sell it at $190 the way it is with an agent, and you're okay with that process of listing it, doing photos, inspections, showings, etc., if you have the time and the stress capacity to handle that, you'll probably still walk away with $30,000 to $40,000 more in your pocket. But if that's not what you want, if you just want a quick, easy, stress-free sale, this is where I would need to be. And she just, at first it surprises you, but then you realize, first I'll finish the story and just tell you, she said, actually, I was thinking if I could get at least 150 that, that would be fine. And I just would be okay not dealing with the headache of it. And so all of that, so I'm going out there in a few hours to go look at it and probably get it under contract. And sounds like it'll be a really easy flip, a nice size profit. And, it's just when you first get into this, you assume that, we have this bias where we assume that everybody thinks the same way that we think and everybody prioritizes the same things that we prioritize. And people ask me all the time that aren't familiar with this space, like even my dad, when I first started getting into it, he was like, why in the world did they sell that to you for that price? Why did they leave that much money on the table? And occasionally you even get people that accuse you of like robbing grandma. And don't get me wrong, There are some crooked people out there that try to take advantage of people or lie to them about the value of their home. And I've come across very few people that are actually like that. Yes, they're out there, but most investors aren't that way. And it just comes down to the fact that for some people, money is not their top priority. Maybe their top priority is just selling it as fast as possible because their lower stress level is more important. Maybe they don't care about the money because they already have $3 million in retirement and they're set and they just don't care about it. Maybe they're getting a divorce. Maybe they're facing foreclosure and waited too long to be able to sell it on the MLS. There's so many reasons and examples that I could give people of people leaving 6 figures of equity on the table just for me to be able to. I bought a house that just 2 weeks ago that is completely turnkey, 3,100 square foot, 2015 build, 6-bedroom house that's worth like $475. The people sold it to me for $300 just because of the fact that I could close in 7 days. And they knew exactly what it was worth because they had it listed with an agent. It was just listed for a while. The agent overpriced it and it went stale. And so they got in this time crunch because of this other great deal on a foreclosure that they were buying. So they were willing to leave a ton of equity on the table on that property to not miss out on the equity of this other great deal that they were buying. So you never know what somebody's motivation is going to be. And it is incredibly fulfilling to be able to do good, ethical business that is open and honest and helping people, and also still be incredibly lucrative for yourself as well. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that some new wholesalers or new investors miss. Like everybody can be happy in a transaction, especially the more transparent you are, the less problems there will be going to closing. Everybody thinks, oh, well, I can sneak this one by. No, like you're going to find it a title or they're going to find it an inspection. Like there's no reason to go through this just to make it take longer when you could just lay it all out on the table. And I really like what you said, because I've always said that the training, I guess, by, gurus is cash, cash, cash. The cash part is important, but the cash itself, like you were saying, that's not the most important part to most people. The people who are accepting cash, even in the scenario that you just said that you're going out later today, it's more of like, they don't want to deal with it. People don't like to deal with estates because it's a lot, it's emotional. So if they can just not clean the place out, take whatever the money is right now that sounds reasonable, that's a great move for them. And it is a win-win. And that's not you, like you said, stealing from grandma. It's just they don't want to go down and deal with the whole thing. They want somebody else to take care of the steps. And that's why I think it's important, because there is people who will show up and just start talking about the cash. But for somebody who's older, like maybe they have, plenty of money in the bank. They don't need more cash. They're just trying to, get their problem solved. It seems like you've developed a really good strategy. And I think that is important what you said, though. You're working in some rural areas where you're from there, you sound like them, and that's much better dialogue, and trust will be built quicker, also based on the amount of deals that you're doing, than somebody who's, in New Jersey calling into, North Carolina, just trying to do deals with a VA. I mean, nobody likes that. Sure, can it work on the large scale? Yeah, but I think that is a huge competitive advantage for you.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's Jonathan. This is just a brief interlude to talk to you about Deal Machine. Listen, I've used Deal Machine and I was crushing it with my Concerned Citizen postcard on Deal Machine. You can look that video up on my YouTube and find out how I did it. It works. Deal Machine works. I've had David Lecko, the CEO, on the podcast. So if you want a free trial of Deal Machine, the elite Driving for Dollars app, and I'm telling you, it works if you use it correctly, you can go to my link at bit.ly/Zen Deal Machine. Now, bit.ly is bit.ly/Zen Deal Machine. It's free and you'll be up and running in 2 minutes, and then you can figure out if you want to keep it. Let's get back to the show. How many flips of mobile homes are you doing at a time generally now?
Right now, I think I'm down to 12 flips in total going right this moment. And I don't know exactly how many. I would say somewhere around half of those are mobile homes. Maybe 7 out of the 12 are, manufactured homes.
Yeah. So is that about the same percentage? And just in terms of the amount that you work on or buy is about a little bit more than half mobile homes versus just regular homes?
Yeah. That's a pretty good representation of my norm.
Yeah. And are you doing outbound marketing as well? And then you also, of course, picking up from wholesalers as you can?
Yeah. So I would say right about half of my deals come from wholesalers and the other half are from my own marketing.
Yeah. Do you have a big setup in the back end? I just talking to you, I feel like you're probably the one who's going to negotiate these deals because it's going to be quick. So are those calls coming direct to you, or do you have some back end services to help if you're getting a lot of calls? Because I think that's what investors don't realize. If you're really good at marketing and you start doing well, your phone will keep ringing. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, no, truthfully, I don't get that many calls because a lot of what I do, I used to do a lot of direct mail and that worked, but that was a whole lot of phone calls that, 98% of those phone calls were garbage or people cussing me out or whatever, so early on, you have more time than you have money. So you do the marketing methods that you can. And then over time that shifts to where you're spending more money than time on marketing. But even with that said, it's interesting because even though you switch to more expensive marketing methods, at the end of the day, you often end up at scale getting that down to a lower cost per deal anyway. So most of what I do now is online, like pay-per-click, social media stuff. So when I get an inquiry, it's usually they're submitting a form on the website, and it comes to me in the form of an email and a text message. And then I'll do a, quick Google search of the property, see what it's all about. And then I'll call them and I start out, from the beginning. Well, first I find out, what they're trying to do with it. Then I ask them if they had a price in mind. Most of the time they'll tell me no, they want me to give them a number first, or they were just wanting to see a cash offer. That's when I try to go ahead and disqualify the lead as quickly as I can. And that's when I normally tell them that, that whole spiel about, well, you're definitely going to get a lot more money if you go this route. We'd probably only be somewhere in this price range. And I'll give them a range over the phone, because when I first started doing this, I would try to make an appointment out of everything, and I would go to everywhere. And eventually you realize if they're wanting close to retail, that's a waste of your time, especially because I'm not a realtor. I can't convert that to a listing appointment. I can maybe refer, listing leads to an actual listing agent, but
still you can't get a referral for that. So if you're spending that hour a different way, you can get 2 properties instead of, just helping a friend get a listing.
Yeah. Well, there are ways that agents can pay you a marketing fee or consultant fee, but nonetheless, it's still not worth the time. And there's no point in me going to an appointment if I'm not going to be the listing agent, So I try to, qualify or disqualify the lead, whatever way you want to look at it, over the phone pretty easily and quickly. And when I give them that range, I just wait for their response. And if if they come back like this lady yesterday and said that that's within the realm of possibility, then I'll schedule an appointment to go look at the property. And the number that I've given them, that price range that I gave them, will be based on, an assumed rehab budget that I have in my head based off of the information I gleaned from them. And so when I go to the property, if the property is within that rehab budget that I assumed, then I know that that range is still a valid range. If not, if it needs way more work, then I'll just have to tell them, hey, this is a lot worse than I assumed. That range isn't applicable. I could only, do this amount and see if it works out or not. And I mean, I haven't looked back at the numbers to see like what my close rate is from appointments, but I mean, it's pretty high. I qualify the leads really, really thoroughly ahead of time. I mean, I would say, appointment to contract, I mean, it's at least 50%, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of great things in there. One, I would say, I also agree that kind of modern micro marketing online is smarter because people are then coming to you. They're raising their hand and saying like, hey, I want you to call me, as opposed to you sending out postcards, which of course all of us have done. And you get just as many like go jump off a bridge, more of those calls than people. And then that's 50%. And then 40% is I want retail. And they don't tell you till you get there, and they want 700 and it's worth 400. They're not even in the ballpark. But I think that's the way to complete the business cycle that you are. And I really like that you said disqualify, because I think that's important. If you're doing online leads, the people are raising their hand, but it's your job to almost try to disqualify them, because that's why your appointment to close rate is so high. You're giving them the opportunity to really opt out or say they want retail. And I would suspect that some kind of hear your number, say, no, that's too low. And then you hear from them a month or two later because they realize they don't want to go do the thing and have people come in and do an open house and all of that. Are you finding that there is some of that the initial conversation sometimes just a gateway to them calling back later when they realize you're right and that's a good deal and it's cash?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of times where I go to the appointment and I make the offer and they're like, oh, well, I need to check with my sister or my brother or whoever first, and then I'll let you know. And sometimes they come back and say, that's fine. And sometimes they say no, or they may say, yeah, that's just leaving a little bit too much money on the table. I'm going to, list it with my agent friend. And, then you see it listed, a week later. Yeah. But yeah, that happens. That happens plenty of times.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at your overall business model, it keeps trending as you go forward into giving you more time. You said you have a fifth child on the way. You're going to want to spend time with your family. So figuring out the methods of marketing and your dialogues to kind of shrink the appointments and have better conversion probably has helped. How would you compare that now from the beginning? Like you said, when you're going out on appointments and then you realize someone's 100,000 too high and you're like, well, I just drove 45 minutes for this. This is terrible.
Yeah, no, it's night and day. But I mean, truth be told, I loved all of it, from the beginning. So I think that's really important to do really well in this space is that you love it, because if you don't, then everything's going to feel like work and it's going to feel hard and pulling teeth. And to me, I knew the potential, so I just saw everything as a win. Every phone call was a win. Every appointment was a bigger win, and it. At first, when you're first getting into this space, it is very, very hard to find deals. You have no relationship or credibility with any wholesalers. You have no track record. You have no marketing methods figured out. And so you're trying to do all the things. You don't have a lot of money usually starting out for marketing. So it's taking a lot more time. I mean, it took me a very long time between when I got my first flip and my second flip. It was a very long period, but then over time, you start to hit that exponential growth curve or that hockey stick growth, as some call it, and your credibility. It's kind of like I like to think of it as the concept of compounding interest is the same thing as in the form of credibility or exposure, and so just like you have compound interest that builds over time upon itself, you have compound credibility, you have compound trust, you have compound marketing. So all the marketing you do over time compounds on each other. So now deals are just falling in my lap left and right because wholesalers that I've bought from before, or even ones that I haven't, but they know who I am, they know I'm going to close. So they're just bringing me deals. And then on the marketing side, I've got that dialed in pretty well to where I don't have to do much work at all on qualifying and closing those leads. And to me, as my business has grown, my priority has been to keep it fun because I love what I do in every second of it. And I don't want to force myself to do anything that's going to jeopardize that relationship that I have with the industry. So when I come across something that I don't like doing, I try to find a way to quit as soon as possible. I figure out a way to outsource it. But even with that in mind, to this day, I still have no employees. I still have no partners on the flipping business.
Yeah.
I just have my own lead gen, wholesalers for lead gen, and contractors for the work, and a listing agent, for reselling the flips. So that's all 1099 stuff. And I'm a little contrarian in the entrepreneur space that I don't have these huge Grant Cardone aspirations to 10x everything or take over the whole world. To me, I'm having a blast doing what I'm doing, and I'm making a ridiculous amount of money doing it, which is just a nice side benefit. And I'm not working that hard, and I'm having fun. If I were to set some audacious goals on a certain number of flips or revenue or profit or door count or whatever, and I were to break it down into daily or weekly KPIs that I held myself accountable to.
You're just giving yourself a job then. I mean,
exactly.
the kind that you don't want. Yeah.
We do this for freedom, and everybody preaches about goal setting and KPIs and all this. And look, if you don't absolutely love what you're doing and you need the accountability to keep yourself motivated, then I get it. That's one thing. But if you love what you're doing and you're motivated as is to do it, then don't make it a job for yourself. Don't give yourself homework unless you just thrive in that level of structure, which I don't.
Right. Yeah, there's great pieces of advice. So as we wrap up, I wanted to hit two of those. One, you talked about compound interest. And I think that's so important because I like what you said, compound credibility, compound marketing. And the thing about compound interest is that assumes that you don't take the money out. And where most people, investors, fail is they start doing well with their marketing and then they just stop for a little. And they think if they take 3 months off, people are going to remember. And that's not it. And it seems like consistency is one of the keys to your business. You've locked in your marketing, people know who you are, and you just don't stop. So that's why it turns into this type of deal flow after 4 years. And then also, I think a great point to say that in the beginning, you were doing all the appointments. And this is something I totally agree with. I think that, if you want to get to this Malcolm Gladwell tipping point, you need reps. And you can't just start and think you're going to have a 50% close rate. You have to go kiss a bunch of frogs. Like that's what the point is. So in the beginning, when you start, like you said, you want to be having fun. And that doesn't mean you're closing every deal. It means you're meeting sellers, understanding how these off-market dialogues go, seeing where you can help, seeing where you can help, and then identifying, like really you're saying before, I really need a listing agent as a partner because I can't close all these deals in the beginning. I need someone, to refer them to. So those things are huge. If someone said to you now, hey, Jason, I want to get involved in mobile home flipping and figuring out how to do this, where's the best place for them to start, do you think now? They have a little bit of money, a little bit of education. What's the best way for them to get going?
Yeah, definitely. If they're not already listening to real estate podcasts like these, then that's the first place to start, education. And if they've got a little bit of capital to start with, I would focus on finding a deal. If you can do online marketing, then great. If not, and you have to just go around driving for dollars, looking for properties and knocking on doors or skip tracing and finding phone numbers and calling the owners, then so be it. Do that. To me, that's fun. That's like a treasure hunt. I wonder sometimes if it might be a little bit primal, like the thrill of the hunt kind of thing. I don't know, but I would start finding a deal is the most important thing. And I would say at least your first deal, if not your first few, do what I didn't do and get somebody that is experienced in that market, in that asset class to come with you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a home inspector. Get a house flipper in your market that knows what they're doing, that's a few years into it, that flips these types of properties, and just tell them, hey, I got this. I think it's a great deal. Can you tell me if you agree? Would you be willing to come look at it for me? And if it is a good deal and I decide, to wholesale it instead of keep it, then you'll have first dibs. They'd probably be more than happy to go out and help you look at it and evaluate it for free. And that way you'd be able to do it safely with somebody else's, expertise behind you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And that goes to something that you've built. Part of the website that links you to Cape Fear Cash Offers is JV with JV, right? And I think that's important because joint venture is a way to grow your business, but also help other people understand your business. So is the best place for people to find you, is that at capefearcashoffers.com or jvwithjv.com?
They both take you to the same website. I more so made the jvwithjv.com link for people that had interest in being private lenders on these flips, or if they wanted to get on a list to be a potential JV equity partner if I came across a deal where I needed one. The Cape Fear Cash Offer website is more so for a seller-facing website than anything.
Out front,
but if people want to stay connected with me and follow what I'm up to and my flips and stuff, they can find me on Instagram. That's where I post most of my real estate related stuff these days.
Instagram's just your name, no underscores or anything, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a pretty unique name.
So that's Jason. Yeah. Yeah. You found one that wasn't taken. Awesome, man. Well, I think you just gave everybody a whole ton of information in a 45-minute masterclass on how to do this. But there's some really important points in there. So I hope people who listen maybe go back through, listen again. Jason, I appreciate your time. It's great to meet you, man.
Absolutely. You too, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. That was Jason Velie, the trailer king in his area, as some call him. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.